Gentlemen, thanks again for being here. Let me cut right to 2030, and then I want to be able to work back to 2020 and be able to do some review from there. What would inhibit the IRS and Census from sharing some of their operations in 2030 to increase the efficiency? And I would tell you, I started talking about this at about 2013, and the answer from that administration was, well, the IRS has a bad reputation, Census has a great reputation, and we don't want to commingle it. That was their public answer. So please don't give me that answer. So what would inhibit us technically to be able to do that? My understanding is IRS and Census already share some information. Why can't we actually share the harvesting of data from Americans all over the country in that shared return?
So I'll start with that. So I think it's important to note that we've successfully, used administrative records to enumerate, I think about 6 million households in the 2020 census. Much of that information is sourced from the IRS, but other organizations as well. I'm not sure that the dual collection would make the most sense, but we already have a close working relationship with the IRS and get records from them that we can use for this purpose. We have a project ongoing that just started this fiscal year that will seek to integrate our sort of geospatial information with information on where people live using these administrative records that I think will lay the groundwork for just the type of more complete use of administrative records to try to reduce costs.
So why wouldn't dual collection work? People are turning in online or in paper form, most of them online at this point with the IRS, to be able to add an additional 10 questions.
Well, I think I'd want to test that and see how that worked.
You have 9.5 years to test it at this point. Well, I'm not being facetious,
Right.
but in some ways pushing to say that this is one of those obvious issues when I raise and say we turn in every 10 years in April to the census, but we turn in every single year to the IRS in April. Why couldn't 10 questions be added to what we do with the IRS every 10 years? And so when they actually do that forms or when they're turning it in, they're also answering their census and checking that off.
So first of all, not everybody fills out a census.
That's correct.
Fills out a
Not everyone fills out their census information. We have to chase those as well.
Unfortunately, but the IRS doesn't knock on your door, though. At least not yet. So this would be something I think we would have to work with the IRS. I'm not sure where they sit on this. I think the fact that Census and IRS can work more closely, and other administrative agencies. We get information from other federal agencies, from states. All this information could be useful.
Right.
And so I think trying to find a way to make the best use of that information to reduce costs and increase the quality of our data is what we're trying to do.
I have to say, most of the time when I get into this conversation, it's because they're in their silo and you're in yours. And it's, again, not trying to be demeaning in that. It's just we haven't done it before. They have their stuff and their timelines. We have our stuff and our timelines. But it's $16 billion. We've got to find a way to be able to find some efficiency between the two. And if there's a way to be able to say, let's work with a system that already works every single year, gathering well over 100 million households, and that can get us started that quickly. It's not that Americans are in the habit of self-filling out information from Census. They only do it every 10 years, and every 10 years it's a little bit different than it was in the past, and no telling how we'll do that in 2030, depending on the technology. It's an area I think we need to explore and not just say, how can we gather some of the administrative data? How can we actually gather the data at the beginning of it and to see if we can merge some of those operations and save the taxpayers significant dollars? Let me ask you about some of the deadlines early on this year. When is the first time that states were officially notified that the deadline would not be achieved?
So I'm not sure. I know, if we have a staff that works with the states all the time, and I think we knew that, making the deadlines was going to be difficult. But I think the first official notification was earlier in February. So
okay, that's the challenge we have. For instance, in my state in Oklahoma, we have to do all of our redistricting within 30 days, within 90 days of when our session begins, February the 1st. So we were already in the process of doing redistricting meetings, doing all of those things, and then suddenly we get notification, not that we're going to be a little late, that we're going to be 5 months late. Now that really throws everything out. So when did you know at first you were going to be 5 months late?
it was right about that time. I mean, I think before, last fall, coming up on the apportionment deadline, the focus was really on trying to meet the statutory deadline
Right.
for apportionment. And there was all hands on deck to do that. So some of the work that we would have been doing then on redistricting was in order to crash the schedule for apportionment, we set that aside. And so it wasn't until after the start of the year that we started, seeing what the real ramifications of that
So with the
was.
apportionment deadline, as I'm seeing, you're about 3 months behind on getting that collected from where your original targets are. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
So even in January,
Almost 4 months. But
yeah, so
right.
even in January, you thought you could still make that up. It wasn't until late January, early February before you knew you're actually gonna be 5 months late.
Before we knew with some certainty, I think it's fair to say that we knew that we weren't going to make the March date, but
So that's what I'm trying to get at. When do you think, when is your best guess of when you knew we're not gonna make March? We could not just be late, we could be significantly late.
so I think, what we learned from last fall was to not be giving dates that we couldn't stand by. So we wanted to wait till we had a better sense of that, and that was early February.
Okay. Obviously, the challenge that we have with that is every state had already started the process of getting things together, and it already started their redistricting meetings and their public meetings and all those things. And that'll all have to be redone all over again, as well as all the litigation that's going to follow from that as well. You had mentioned before about if you don't do the software updates and the things and to perfect the way that you're releasing it, if you release the redistricting data the same way you did in 2010, you do for the 2020 time period, you could shave some time off of that September 30th date. How much time do you think that could be?
So mid to late August.
Okay.
So about a month, or maybe a little bit more.
That would be helpful to be able to get.
Yep.
Thank you.